Jocko, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, Jocko, there's the good, the bad, what he says about the ecological approach to training. He's wrong about that. And the ugly, I'll take that. Oh, by the way, of course, fast forward through this. If you don't like a part, we're a video, so we can scroll forward, scroll backward, skip a part we don't want, and go to something else. So, take advantage of that if you want. So, the good. Be clear. Let's get our facts straight and everything. This is constructive criticism, good person to good person, not jerk stuff. So, Jocko, thank you for a lot of what you do. Hell yeah. Good podcast, good book. It's got some good ideas. He's done some badass work. Navy SEAL. I couldn't do it. Extreme Ownership, good book. I've listened to that on Audible a few times, and I've recommended it to a number of people, and have quoted some stuff from it. It's good, developing the ideas of discipline beyond what we might already know. Good stuff. Ownership, discipline, responsibility. But he advocates discipline. Thank you, Jocko. Good stuff. We know about discipline, but we can always learn more. It's good hearing about it in different contexts too. Military, management, self-discipline, life, all this stuff. There's so much we could think about, a hell ton of stuff to think about. We don't think about everything. But and the discipline is needed a lot nowadays too in our world. Man, a lot of people need more discipline, need it in the first place. And then, of course, with it, responsibility, that's good. Be disciplined, take responsibility, in whatever kind of management or leadership position you're in. Jocko, good on fitness. Promoting fitness is good too. Promoting and practicing, that's another thing people need more of. Man, the world would be so much better if people were more fit. Because of, like, Dr. John Rady says in the book Spark, subtitled The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain. Fitness just ain't for looks, or it ain't superficial, it ain't just for muscle. It's a heck ton more of that. It's also for cognition, memory, being a good human, self-control, confidence, stuff like that. Great. Good podcast episodes. Jocko, thank you for discussing books and military heroes and people and situations and all that. And discipline and fitness and martial arts and all that. Good stuff. Need more of that in this world. And good book recommendations. Like, I don't know if it was actually a recommendation or just something I thought of. It was interesting reading about martial arts. I think I got maybe a Gracie bio or book on my wish list. I haven't done yet, but I've listened to some stuff about the history of BJJ. And one book I liked a lot. Good recommendation. Thank you, Jocko. The Psychology of Military Incompetence. Excellent. I think I've listened to that twice maybe. I've quoted that. I've recommended it. Because it's about, as you say, and they say in the book, I think, about management and leadership in general, not just about military stuff. It's about managerial incompetence, which, unfortunately, we all have too much familiarity with. Just incompetent, horrible leaders or managers. Even if they're not horrible, they're still incompetent and bothersome. But it's good, especially from a philosophic perspective. But there's some good. Could go on longer, but we can't go on forever in this thing because we're talking about the EA. Okay, there's some good there. Be clear about what's going on. Okay, the bad. Jocko, you don't know what you're talking about with the ecological approach to fitness. Dude, get with it. You know, this is constructive criticism, good person to good person. Again, it ain't being a jerk. This is to help out. But mischaracterizing things ain't right, you know. We'll get into that later. But I've heard Jocko characterize the ecological approach as nothing more but figuring things out yourself. I've heard that a number of times across different episodes that span months or years, and even in a more recent episode. So if there's some that I haven't heard where Jocko characterizes the ecological approach properly, then please let me know, because right now I ain't heard it. I ain't listened to every single one of his podcasts. It could be there, but as I say, recently the EA was mischaracterized again as being nothing more than a method of figuring it out yourself, and it was kind of a tone of voice that wasn't appropriate for the ecological approach. Showed some kind of like disdain or whatever, something like that, something or other in that general vicinity. Not appropriate for what the approach really is. If there are some episodes out there, man, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. But right now, I ain't. Now, think about it this way. You know, think about saying the ecological approach is nothing more than figuring things out on your own. That's like saying Navy SEALs just go out and run around and do things on their own, which is ridiculous. Man, there's principles involved, there's training, there's depth, there's technique, there's discipline, there's strategy. There's a hell ton going on more than just going out and fighting on your own, you know? Okay, so we got the good, we got the bad. Now, EA. Okay, we're going to go through on this stuff. Why does it matter that we characterize it right? What is the EA and some fundamentals of it, basically, and then we're going to dig into detail on some of this stuff. We should characterize things correctly, know what they are. I mean, for one thing, come on, Jocko, extreme ownership, own what you say. Think about getting EO, extreme ownership, principles of management and leadership. Think about applying them to managing your own thoughts, managing your words, being a leader of your words and marshaling your words and your statements and your arguments, managing your thoughts and arguments, marshaling them. Okay. Extreme ownership, take ownership for your thoughts and what you say, especially Jocko. I mean, I'm a nobody, you know? But Jocko, you got, from what I looked up, I didn't look on YouTube in particular, but just looking up, so I thought a lot of people listened to the podcast and wanted to know some numbers, so on some AI summary thing, and then I looked in some detail, some other sites confirmed it, but Jocko's got about 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and what, the episodes are downloaded like millions of times a day or per week? Come on, Jocko. People are out there listening to you. Please get things right for them. In your own mind or whatever, maybe be a little loose. Don't mischaracterize things to millions of people, please. Okay? We need to know the truth and what's good to help develop things. Make our lives better, you know, and you wouldn't want to mischaracterize a good training program in the military if you had some good training program for your men and you mischaracterize it as running around or playing in the woods, you know? it ain't gonna help. We want the people we work with in our, at least subordinates, not necessarily cognitively, morally, socially, but just in those little human-made social framework thing, are subordinates in that sense. Subordinate in terms of accepting a position so we can have some company that runs. Saying nothing about metaphysical or moral value, but if we got that, we want to help our subordinates, help the people who depend on us and who we got to make leadership decisions for. If we got to suffer that responsibility, we should have good training programs for them. Very important. Or you wouldn't want to mischaracterize people out there in a battleground. You mischaracterize someone as foe when they're friend, or you mischaracterize them as friend when they're foe. There could be some bad results. It's important. Let's get things right. We want to stick to the truth. And I know, Jocko, I know you care about that. Some people that wouldn't make this video in the same way for it. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't care. They don't care about the truth. But I got more confidence in Jocko about that. But so this stuff matters. We want to know what is true in the world. See things as they are, not as they're not. We want to go around seeing things clearly and not dressing things up to be witches or demons or clowns when they're not, and vice versa. Okay, so we got the good, the bad, and the ugly. We know why this is important. And it's important to me because, man, I know a little bit about the ecological approach and it's damn good stuff. And I care about life and science and knowing how I move, how philosophy relates to the ecological approach, relates to fitness, how fitness relates to the ecological approach, how it relates to my cognition, being a good human, how the ecological approach, blah, 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 through a causal chain comes around and affects and makes me able to be a better person for myself and for other people, all these like interactive cause-effect relationships, all these connections, but it's important. Okay, 2, so EA, what is it then? If it ain't figuring things out on your own, what is it? What does it mean? How do we understand it? What is an understanding of the ecological approach? We have an idea of understanding and know some of what it is, but having studied philosophy, I've learned from some other people some ways to characterize understanding, some 3 key characteristics. Okay, we got understanding versus knowledge versus belief. When is something in our head? When is this knowledge of reality of things? When do we understand something? When knowledge is an awareness of reality. So when do we understand something out in the world? When do we just know about it? When do we have beliefs? When are we wrong? What's the difference? So one thing that makes for understanding of something, the three characteristics, the essence of it. What is it to be that thing? What is it to be a chair? What is it to be a person? What's human nature? What's chair nature? What is it to be a squirrel? Because not all squirrels climb trees. So what is it to be a squirrel? What's squirrel nature? What is it? What is war? What's the nature of war? What's the nature of victory? What's the nature of capitalism, of communism? Okay, things like that. Then, of course, in this context, come back to it. What's the nature of the ecological approach? What is the ecological approach? Okay, what's the essence? Trace the idea of vector reality. Go back step by step from the abstraction to the evidence of the senses. Kind of like you got the thing now, you got when you were a baby. How did you necessarily logically figure it out step by step from when you were a baby till now, if you understand it? If an idea is, okay, so sometimes we can't figure out how to trace an idea back to reality. Some reasons could be because it ain't so. If an idea ain't true, we can't trace it back to reality because it's not true, it's not connected to reality, it's made up. It's not connected to reality cognitively, logically. And it could be that we don't understand it. We think we do, but we don't. We need to be able to trace an idea back to reality. Like human rights. How do we start with what we see and experience and stuff we know about life and figure that out? Or the Pythagorean theorem. How do we figure that out? Or quantum mechanics. Here's what we see and know, and how do we abstract and go through science to reason that out? Or ideas about warfare. How do we get principles of the psychology of military incompetence, principles in there, how do we derive them from the evidence of the senses? Okay, and same thing, how do we get the ecological approach? Where does it come from? Yeah. Okay, so those are two things. Essence of it, trace it back to reality. And then number 3, for understanding, 3 things to understand, 3 things that characterize this cognitive state of understanding. 3, connect. Connect an idea to other things you know. Other causally relevant things. Of course it doesn't mean daydream, make arbitrary association, make stuff up, imagine. But it means get an idea and figure out how it relates to other things. Just like in fitness, how does crawling with good technique relate to walking? How does crawling on your hands and your feet and knees, kind of like a so-called bear crawl? I like to think of it more as a cheetah crawl or leopard crawl. Move more like a leopard or cheetah than a bear. But how does a crawl relate to walking? How does it relate to running? How does it relate to climbing a ladder? How does the posture you need in running or good crawling relate to breathing? How does good breathing technique relate to running? How does good posture relate to weightlifting? How does good breathing technique relate to weightlifting? How does being fit relate to brain activity? You get the idea. Connect. How does doing a bear crawl correctly relate to moving through nature, relate to getting exercise, relate to being a good human, relate to being a better person around other people in the world, Truth. So that's understanding. Essence of something, trace it back to reality, connect. Okay, so if we're going to understand the ecological approach, here's some of the things we have to understand. This is what it means. It's not merely doing things on your own. It's not merely a training system. It's not merely in BJJ. Okay? The ecological approach. Perception and experience are valid. We have direct awareness of reality, not indirect, as we'll talk about some later. And all reasoning is second to direct experience. Okay? We are directly aware of reality, and other people think other things. It's in philosophy and history. I'll discuss some of it. You can go look it up yourself too. I recommend it. Number 2, we're animals living in an ecology. Okay? We're human, yeah, but we're still human animals. Okay? We adapt to reality in our ecology. We can adapt some things to us, so to speak, like we can develop air conditioning and if it's cool, but then we're just having it at a temperature that's comfortable for us, which is a temperature more like where we evolved, from what scientists say. There are certain conditions where we evolved, we adapted to that environment, and we're just doing something so we're staying within what we adapted to. And then when we come up with air conditioning or whatever, or glass windows, we're adapting the world to us only by adapting to the world. You know, we obey its laws. We don't come out of like violate nature and impose on it to come up with air conditioning or glass. We still got to bow down to it and obey it and do what it says. You know, we're at its mercy. We obey its laws. So we adapt to reality and ecology. 4, we move through an environment, an ecology, perceptually. We don't ignore the evidence of the senses or experience and have something upstairs telling us what to do, giving us orders. We're not like calculating. We don't have a calculating dictator up there driving us around like robots or something, oblivious to the world, you know. We're immersed in it. We're aware of it. We have direct perception. We're moving through our environment, constantly getting awareness. Just like Dr. Rob Gray at Arizona State University says, he researches the ecological approach and teaches it and studies it. It comes from J.J. Gibson. So as they both said in basically the same way, we perceive so that we can move through the environment and act, but we also move to perceive, as you can tell by some animals and things. They go together. To perceive is not some instantaneous camera capture. Perception is three-dimensional and across time. Perception doesn't occur instantaneously. We perceive so that we can move, and we move so we can perceive. Just like you can tell from some animals that move their head around to see something better. Okay, that's the way the visual system works. It's animal, it's neurological, it's not some airy-fairy, made-up imagination thing that some poor philosopher or poor scientist might make up. Okay, it's number 4. So those are some important ideas about the ecological approach. Perception is direct awareness of reality. It's valid. We're animals moving through an ecology. We adapt to our ecology. We move through an ecology or environment fundamentally perceptually and motor. You know, I'm just saying kind of like part of it and how clearly it's not only perceptual. We perceive to move, as I say, and we're like material and muscle and blood and all that. And then some important ideas about the some important ideas about the EA are the scientific theory, what J.J. Gibson says. So that's the basics. Now we'll go through and discuss some of this in detail. Look at about 7 different things.